Hey there. Today, we're going to tear down the firearm. Well, not literally. We're going to deconstruct it, get right down to the basics. We're going to strip away all the complexity and look at the simple core principles of how these things actually work.
So you hear the words all the time, right? Rifle, shotgun, pistol, but what really separates them? I mean, beyond just how they look. It's super easy to get bogged down in all the jargon, but you know what? The real difference is way simpler than you might think.
Yeah, believe it or not, no matter how wild or complicated a firearm looks on the outside, it all boils down to just three key parts: the barrel, the action, and the ignition system. That's it. Think of them like the DNA of any gun. Once you get these three, you get everything. So let's kick things off with the first one, the barrel.
All right, part one, the barrel. The path of the projectile. Seems pretty straightforward, right? It's just the tube the bullet flies down. But its design is absolutely crucial. It basically determines what the firearm is meant to do. And funny enough, how we even measure a barrel's size isn't always what you'd expect.
And this is where things can get a little confusing for people. For rifles and pistols, we use caliber. Super simple. It's just a direct measurement of how wide the inside of the barrel is. Easy. But then you get to shotguns and they use gauge, which is, well, it's a really old system. So get this, a shotgun's gauge isn't a measurement of width. It's the number of lead balls, each the same diameter as the barrel, that you'd need to add up to 1 pound of weight. It's kind of wild. And what that means, and this is the part that trips everyone up, is that a smaller gauge number, like a 12 gauge, is actually a bigger barrel than a 20 gauge. Totally backwards from what you'd think. Okay, so besides the width, what's going on inside the barrel is a huge deal. You've got two main types. First, there's the rifled barrel. It has these spiral grooves cut into it. Why? To make a single bullet spin as it goes down the barrel. It's exactly like a quarterback putting a tight spiral on a football for maximum accuracy and stability. Then you have the total opposite, a smoothbore barrel, which is what you find on shotguns. As the name suggests, it's perfectly smooth inside. It's not designed for a single spinning bullet, but for firing a shell full of little pellets. We call that shot, or sometimes one big projectile, which we call a slug.
And the barrel story doesn't even end there. The very tip of the barrel, the muzzle, can be customized with all sorts of attachments. You've got things to make it quieter, things to reduce the kick or the flash of light, and for shotguns, a choke, which is like a nozzle that tightens up the spread of those pellets. Each one of these little add-ons can totally change how the firearm behaves.
So that's the barrel. Now for part two of our big three, the action. And if the barrel is the highway for the projectile, the action is the engine. It's the beating mechanical heart of the whole machine, the part that does all the heavy lifting. So what is the action exactly? Well, to put it simply, it's the mechanism that does all the work. You know that whole cycle of loading a fresh round, firing it, and then kicking out the empty shells so the next one can come in? That whole dance? That's the action. Now, when we look at handguns, this engine comes in a few main flavors. You've got your single shot, which is exactly what it sounds like. You have to manually load every single round. Then there's the iconic revolver, with that spinning cylinder that lines up a new cartridge with the barrel each time you pull the trigger or cock the hammer. And finally, the self-loading pistol, what most people call a semi-automatic. This one is pretty clever. It actually uses the energy from the shot to automatically kick out the used casing and load a fresh one from the magazine.
Okay, let's zoom in on those self-loaders for a second, because this is really cool. There are two main ways they work. For smaller, lower-power cartridges, a simple blowback design is all you need. Basically, the sheer weight of the slide and a spring are enough to hold everything together just long enough for the bullet to leave. But when you get to more powerful rounds, you need something beefier. You need a locked breech. Think of it like a bank vault door. It's a physical, mechanical lock that keeps the chamber sealed shut under all that insane pressure. Only after the pressure drops to a safe level does it unlock and cycle. It's a brilliant bit of engineering to handle some serious power.
And what about long guns like rifles and shotguns? Well, they use similar kinds of actions, just bigger and often operated in a different way. You have the classic bolt action, where you manually cycle a bolt handle up and back. Then there's the pump action, which everyone recognizes. You slide that forend back and forth to load the next shell. Cha-chunk. And of course, you also have self-loading rifles and shotguns, which work on the very same principles as the pistols we just talked about. They're just, built to handle the bigger rounds.
And that brings us to our third and final piece of the puzzle, ignition, the spark that kicks the whole thing off. And let me tell you, this is where the history gets really, really cool. We're talking about an evolution that goes from using an actual literal burning rope to the sleek, self-contained ammo we have today.
I mean, just look at this progression. It's amazing. Way back in the 15th century, you had the matchlock, which literally used a slow-burning piece of rope to set off the gunpowder. Then came the flintlock, a big step up, using a piece of flint hitting steel to make a spark. But the real revolution, the absolute game changer, was the percussion system in the 1800s. It used a tiny cap with an explosive compound inside. Suddenly, you had a much more reliable and weatherproof way to fire a gun. And that single invention paved the way directly to the modern self-contained cartridge we use now, where the primer, the powder, and the bullet are all neatly packaged together.
Okay, so we've got our 3 building blocks, right? The barrel, the action, and the ignition. We've looked at each one. Now for the fun part. Let's put them all together and see how these simple parts combine to create the different kinds of firearms that we all recognize.
So check this out. You take a short, rifled barrel and you combine it with a revolver or a self-loading action and boom, you've got a handgun. Now take a long rifled barrel and pair it with an action made for precision firing from the shoulder, well, that's a rifle. And finally, a long, smoothbore barrel, usually with a pump or self-loading action, that's your classic shotgun. See, it's just mixing and matching these basic components that defines what each firearm is built to do.
So really, it all just boils down to a super simple formula. The barrel plus the action plus the general shape or form. Whether you hold it in your hand or put it on your shoulder. That's it. That's what defines a type of firearm. It's not about how it looks, what color it is, or what accessories are on it. It's all about pure function. So now, you get the how. You understand the basic mechanical building blocks. But that just opens up a much bigger and maybe even more interesting question, doesn't it? The why. Why combine these parts in all these different ways? What specific problems were designers trying to solve? What ideas drove them to create such an incredible variety of tools? Something to chew on. Thanks for joining me on this one.